Right. So I'm going to talk today about small, the once and future hope of the American economy. And when I say small, I mean basically small business, American small business. Why do I talk about small business? Because I believe that the future of America depends on small business. Those of you who are small business owners, in your hand is our economic future. And let me explain why. If we begin with a conversation about small, the first thing we need to do is to kind of think about the alternative, which is big. Why is America fascinated? Why has America been fascinated with big? For the very, very simple reason that when you try to do big things, huge undertakings, enormous undertakings, you need a big business big enough to do something about it. Want to build a railroad, you need a big business. Want to have oil fields, you need a big business. Okay? So big has become kind of the great love affair of America, much to our long-term detriment, as we'll see momentarily. Because one of the consequences, the bad side of big, is the bigger they are, the harder they fall. So big businesses make big mistakes that have big consequences. And that's one of the reasons why we have enjoyed these interesting misadventures over the last year, year and a half or so. Big businesses. The problem with a big business is that big businesses often go out of business long before they run out of money. They don't understand the difference between not-for-profit and non-profit. Not-for-profit is a filing status and intentional. Non-profit is General Motors. So you see the difference between the two. That's the reality of America. That's where we are and why we need to turn to small business. And that's what this whole conversation is about. So let's talk about small business. Is it a new thing in America, this whole idea of small business? No, in fact, small business, small individual enterprises are the foundation, the principle upon which our economy and, in fact, our country and our political system was built. Small is what it was all about. Why is that? Because America is a nation with a very specific DNA. I really believe if you got a micron microscope, really good microscope, you could discover the disenfranchised, diligent, optimist gene in more Americans than in any other country. The disenfranchised, diligent optimist. I can't get it done where I am, whether that's a corporation or another country. I need to do something about it. I have the guts to do that. And I gotta believe things are going to be better. The disenfranchised, diligent, optimist gene is what makes America, America, what makes small business wonderful, powerful, dynamic, and exciting. And it goes back a long way. A fellow named Alexis de Tocqueville, a Frenchman, visited this country in 1835. And what did he observe? What astonishes me, he said, is not the large enterprises, but the multitude of small enterprises. As a matter of fact, he understood that the American experiment in liberty had a lot to do with the fact that there were so many people doing their own little things. Nothing fights revolution so much as commerce. Everybody being able to do their own thing. That is the heart, the soul, the strength of this country. So it goes back quite a ways. At the same time, what we really need to understand is the place of small business in America. I don't know if anybody's ever done this exercise before, but here is a landscape of American business. Very interestingly, there are only 500 Fortune 500 companies. What's the rest of America like? Well, the rest of America like is basically there are 18,000, only 18,000 businesses with more than 500 employees. That's not a heck of a lot. There are 90,000 businesses with between 100 and 499 employees. There are 6 million businesses that have employee count between 2 and 99, and there are 22 million Americans who basically do their own thing. So what does that add up to? That means that the bulk of what goes on in America is really small business in a lot of different ways. Let's break that down a little bit. What we have here is a country where small business employs 99.7% of all employees. More importantly, 44% of all U.S. payroll. That's small business. Small business is actually big business, apparently. Okay, let's go on. 40% of all the high-tech workers employed in America are employed by small businesses. And even more interestingly, 60 to 80% of all new jobs created are created by whom? Small business. That's where it comes from. Not from government, not from programs, from people who create opportunities for themselves and others, 60 to 80%. We did some research recently and discovered that women-owned small businesses have been growing over the last decade at the rate of 20% per year. Huge. Let's talk about that a little bit more. What are the implications? Well, you know, it's a big global economy and you got to be big to compete out there. And not true. The most competitive American businesses are small businesses. 97% of exporters are small businesses. What's even more interesting, talk about competitive, let's talk about technology and big breakthroughs. They need to come from big companies, right? Big technology has to come from big companies. Not exactly. And the majority of the innovation that is generated in America ultimately comes from small businesses. 13 times more patents than large businesses. And more often, the things that we talk about when we say technological breakthroughs, twice as often, they come from small businesses. So small business is hugely important, incredibly important. As a matter of fact, small business and inventiveness have gone hand in hand together for a long time. Some of you may be familiar with this good-looking young man. He grew up in, or he didn't grow up, but he eventually settled in Hartford, Connecticut. Mark Twain. Mark Twain kind of is the epitome of what's interesting about America and small business. Number one, we are a nation of inventors that have been forever. Have been forever. In fact, Twain observes that if the only thing we ever invented was liberty, we would continue to be able to claim inventiveness. That's pretty good. But what we also do is keep inventing things that we're not supposed to invent, because in addition to being a nation of disenfranchised diligent optimists, America is also a nation of collective congenital amnesiacs. We don't remember things. We don't remember things, for example, what we're not supposed to be able to do. Bill Lear invented the Learjet because he didn't know enough aeronautics to know that it wouldn't fly. It was not supposed to fly, and if he had an aeronautical degree, he would have known that. Well, small business works the same way. We don't remember the roots that are supposed to keep us down. As Mark Twain once observed in that particular note, he said, "The average American may not know who his grandfather is, but on the whole, he's much better off than the average Frenchman who is in doubt of who his father is."